Hi, this is Jim Perry with Perry Capital, August 3rd, Saturday afternoon. Hope everybody's having a good weekend and watching the Olympics. I am, and they're awesome. I thought I'd send this out today because I got a lot of calls, texts, emails asking me why the stock market was doing so poorly. So I thought I'd do a quick little roundup. Powell did not cut on Wednesday, as expected, and was as dovish as he had sounded the last 2 or 3 times he's spoken. So nothing changed there. What did change, though, it's very interesting. The VIX, which measures the volatility in the stock market, was at 16 after he got done speaking. It was at 16 before the announcement, which is low. 16 is a decent number, and it shows there's no stress in the system. But by Thursday night, the VIX had gone up to 30, right? So the volatility index in the market doubled. And that doesn't happen very often, and that's a big deal. And what's interesting is that, yes, the NASDAQ was down 3.5% last week, right? But the fact is, from the highs on Thursday to the open before the non-farm payroll number, the NASDAQ was down 5.3%. After the non-farm payroll number, it went down less than a quarter of a percentage point. So this is not about the non-farm payroll number, ladies and gentlemen. There's something bigger going on here. The economy picked up, according to the labor force statistics, which you did not hear about on Friday. The labor force is the largest it's ever been, and it's 450,000 jobs larger today than it was a month ago. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics is not picking these things up, and the fact is that household incomes corroborate this trend. Household incomes have never been higher. Household debt is the lowest it's been in 15 years and still going down. So it's not about that. Yes, disposable income is going down because households have increased costs, right? So that's the biggest problem. CPI is still growing at 3%. And core CPI is at 3.5%, and GDP is at 2%. That's the stagflationary economy. That's where we've been. Nothing really has changed except for one big thing, which has made all the difference. The dollar is down 9.5% against the yen, all right, since July 10th. It's also down 5% against the Swiss franc. Now, this is not about the dollar collapsing because of China or Russia or Brazil, the BRICS, right? Those currencies are down too, right? The currencies that are rising are the Swiss franc, 5%, and the yen. Now, why is this happening? On July 3rd, after the G7 ministers finished their meeting in Sintra, Portugal, which is a nice place, you should go actually. There's a cool castle there, and it's a beautiful place, the Portuguese Riviera. Anyway, that night, the Bank of Japan sold dollars, all right? And they bought yen. And then they did it twice since then. So since July 10th, the dollar is down 9.5% against the yen, and that's an enormous deal. And the reason for it is that broker-dealers, hedge funds, quant funds, they need money to borrow every day so that they can put on their leverage carry trades and pick up their carry. The volume of yen funding outside of Japan is directly correlated to the size of the balance sheets of the broker-dealers in this country. And the broker-dealers, of course, are the ones that give the liquidity to the hedge fund and quant communities. That number, and again, this is a fact, right? I have a white paper from the IMF here that shows the correlations. The number of the amount that broker-dealer balance sheets have come down since July 10th is about $5 trillion. And that's a big deal. Trillion, right? The stock market's worth 45, right? So you're talking about more than 10% of the value of the stock market in terms of liquidity has come out of the financial system since July 10th. And that's the problem. That's what's doing this, right? So hedge fund guys that have been borrowing money and getting into these momentum trades, they're taking money off the table. They are liquidating stocks, and they are liquidating high yield bonds, and they're liquidating just about anything that provided them with a very, very non-risk leveraged carry trade for as long as 30 years. People have been borrowing money for almost for nothing in Japan for 30 years. That trade is over, right? The Bank of Japan has raised rates, and they did that this week. And that is the game changer. And again, the non-farm payroll number wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. The Fed funds rate's at 5.5%. It was at 5.5% last July. And at that time, the Fed thought that unemployment by now would be 5%, 5.5%. It's not. It's at 4.3. I think the economy is doing okay. It's not great, but the stock market is telling you a different story. And if liquidity comes out of the system, and that's what this is all about, the stock market is still really, really expensive. And credit spreads are really tight. There's a tremendous amount of inflation in the financial assets that we have available to us to invest in. So I think that you have to keep that in mind. And yes, the street got its knickers twisted, as they say in England, mainly because, and I think this is Michael Hartnett, who does a great job. And then you've seen it everywhere. You can see it in any chart. But when the Fed first cuts, stock markets go down almost all the time, right? It's probably almost as accurate as the Psalm rule, which we'll talk about later. I'll do my strategy report this weekend. You'll get it, institutional guys, and I'll explain both of these things. But the fact is, this is probably going to get worse before it gets better. This is the problem, right? And if it gets bad enough, say it's another 5% or 10 or 15, you're going to get some intervention. You'll get it from the Fed or from the Treasury Department or both, and maybe before September 18th. I don't know. If the stock market calms down and inflation's still picking up, there's a chance the Fed won't cut. But right now, you sure wouldn't know it by listening to the financial news or reading the papers or reading anything that you see on these screens behind me. In fact, on the screen behind me, I thought I had the dollar yen on there. That's the VIX. It went from 16 to 30, right? Before the non-farm payroll number. Anyway, that's the story. Good luck. Thanks for chiming in or picking up into this stuff. And we appreciate your support. Thanks. Bye.